Most men think attraction is about what they say. It's not. It's about something much older than words, something women feel before a man even opens his mouth. And honestly, most men will go their entire lives without ever understanding what it actually is. Here's what we're going to talk about today, and I want you to actually stay with this, because this isn't the usual be more confident advice you've heard 100 times. There's a psychological pattern that shows up in almost every woman's behavior when she's genuinely drawn to a man. Not just physically attracted, but pulled toward him. The kind of feeling where she's thinking about him when she doesn't mean to be. Researchers have looked at this. Relationship therapists have noticed it, and a small number of men, not because they're better looking or wealthier, but because they get something specific about how women actually work. These men experience relationships that feel completely different from what most guys go through. We're calling it the hero instinct. And no, it's not a manipulation trick. It's not about playing games or pretending to be someone you're not. It's about understanding what a woman's nervous system is actually responding to. Underneath all the surface stuff, the texting, the dates, the conversations, there's something deeper happening. And once you see it, you genuinely cannot unsee it. By the end of this, you're going to look back at situations in your own life, moments with women that maybe confused you or went sideways when you thought they were going well, and they're going to make a different kind of sense. There's one part in particular, toward the middle of this video, that tends to be the thing most men have never once considered. It's quiet, it's subtle, and it might be the most important thing here. So let's start from the beginning. Let me ask you something. Think about a time when you were genuinely good at something. Maybe it was at work. Maybe it was fixing something, solving a problem, helping someone through a hard moment. And someone, the right person, noticed. Not in a big dramatic way, just they saw it. They acknowledged it quietly. How did that feel? There's something that happens in that moment, something that goes beyond just feeling appreciated. It's more like you felt real, like you existed in a way that actually mattered. Now here's the thing most people don't talk about. Women feel a version of that too, but it works differently for them, almost in reverse. A woman doesn't just want to be seen. She wants to feel like the man she's with needs to be the one who shows up for her. Not out of desperation, not out of weakness, but out of something that feels almost instinctive in him, like protecting her, providing something meaningful, being genuinely present in a way that costs him something. That's the hero instinct. And it's not something women consciously decide to feel. It happens underneath that. It's biological, honestly, wired in over thousands of years of human bonding. Here's the psychology behind it, simply put. Women are drawn to men who have a sense of purpose in the relationship. Not just a guy who shows up and is nice, but a man who makes her feel like she genuinely matters to him, and that his presence in her life means something specific. Not generic love, specific care, specific attention. The feeling that this particular man sees her in particular. And what activates that feeling in her? It's not grand gestures. It's not how much money you have or how good-looking you are. Though, sure, those things exist in the equation. What actually triggers it is much simpler and much harder at the same time. It's the feeling that you chose her, actively, repeatedly, not because you had no other options, but because out of whatever options existed, you kept choosing her. Now, here's where most men completely miss this. Most men think attraction is something they need to earn continuously. So they perform, they over-text, they over-explain themselves, they try to impress. And in doing that, in constantly reaching outward trying to get her approval, they accidentally communicate the opposite of what she needs to feel. She stops feeling chosen. She starts feeling like she's being pursued by someone who needs her validation. And that specific dynamic is what kills attraction quietly, slowly, without either person fully understanding why. The man thinks he's doing everything right. He's attentive, he's available, he's trying, and she's pulling away, and she doesn't even fully know why. She might tell herself it's something else. She might say she's not ready, or things are moving too fast, or she doesn't feel a connection. But underneath all of that, underneath the language she's using to explain something she can't quite name, what she actually lost was the feeling that he was a man with his own grounded sense of self, a man who wanted her, but didn't need her approval to feel okay. That's a subtle distinction, but it's everything. And this is exactly where the hero instinct starts to matter, because it's not about becoming cold or distant or playing hard to get in some calculated way. It's about something much more real than that. It's about understanding what women actually respond to at a level most relationship advice never even touches. And that's what we're getting into next. All right, so let's get into the actual behavior, the real stuff, the first thing. And this one sounds simple, but it goes deep, is what I'd call the weight of your presence. Most men, when they're around a woman they're attracted to, unconsciously shrink. Not physically, but energetically. They become more agreeable, more careful. They start editing themselves in real time, choosing words more cautiously, laughing a little too quickly at things that aren't that funny, filling silences because silence feels dangerous to them. And here's the thing, she notices all of it. Not always consciously, but her nervous system picks it up the way you'd pick up a strange smell in a room. Something just feels off. Something feels like the man in front of her is slightly performing, slightly afraid. And fear, even quiet, polite, well-dressed fear, is not attractive. Let me paint you a picture. Two men, same situation. A first date at a coffee shop. The woman says something playful, slightly teasing. "You seem like the kind of guy who takes forever to order." Man A laughs nervously, says, "Haha, yeah, guilty." Immediately starts over-explaining his order history, making himself the butt of the joke, trying to seem easygoing. Man B pauses, looks at her for just a second longer than expected, then says, almost casually, "Maybe I just know what I want when I see it." And then he picks up his coffee. Same situation, completely different energy. Man A was reacting, trying to manage her impression of him, trying to make sure she liked him. Man B was just there, settled. He didn't need to fix anything. He took her playfulness and turned it into a moment without overthinking it. Not because he rehearsed a line, but because he wasn't afraid of the moment. That's the weight of presence. It's the difference between a man who is in the conversation and a man who is watching himself in the conversation. And here's what most men get wrong about this. They think presence is about being louder, more dominant, filling more space with words and opinions and stories. But that's not it at all. Real presence is actually quieter than most men expect. It's the guy who doesn't rush to respond, who lets a silence sit for a moment without panicking, who asks one genuine question instead of 10 surface-level ones, who, when something bothers him, says so, calmly, without drama, instead of swallowing it and smiling through it. Women feel the difference immediately, even if they can't explain what's different about him. They just feel more real around him. Less like they're being interviewed or entertained, more like they're actually with someone. And that feeling, that sense of being with someone who is fully, quietly, groundedly there, that's one of the first things that activates the hero instinct in a woman. Because a man with real presence communicates something without saying a word. He communicates, "I don't need this moment to go a certain way to feel okay about myself." And that is genuinely rare. Rarer than most men realize. Now, the second piece of this, and this one's connected, but it operates a little differently, is what I'd call the power of noticing the small things. Here's something about women that most men fundamentally misunderstand. Women do not primarily bond through big romantic gestures. They bond through being seen in small, specific, unhurried ways. A woman can go on a weekend trip with a man who planned every detail, booked a beautiful hotel, did everything right, and walk away feeling vaguely empty. Not ungrateful, just like something was missing. And then the same woman can sit in a parking lot for 45 minutes, talking to a different man about something she's worried about, and feel closer to him than she has to anyone in years. The difference isn't effort, it's attention. Specifically, the kind of attention that makes her feel like she's being actually known. Not just liked in a general way, but understood in a specific way. This shows up in small things, remembering something she mentioned offhand 2 weeks ago. Noticing when her mood has shifted slightly, even when she's pretending it hasn't. Asking a follow-up question about something she brought up before, not as a technique, but because you were actually listening. These things don't sound dramatic, but they land hard. Because what she feels when a man does this isn't just, oh, he's sweet. What she feels is, he actually pays attention to me, not to an idea of me, not to what he wants me to be, to who I actually am. And that specific feeling of being genuinely known is one of the deepest emotional needs a person has, man or woman. But here's where most men get this wrong. They confuse attention with availability. They think that being always there, always texting back immediately, always present and ready, that this communicates how much they care. But constant availability doesn't communicate that you see her. It communicates that you don't have much else pulling your attention. And ironically, it makes her feel less special, not more. Because if you're that available to everyone and everything, what does your attention actually mean? Real attention is selective. A man who is genuinely engaged with his own life, his own thoughts, his own work. When that man turns his full focus toward her, it means something. It lands differently. It feels like a choice, not a default. So the move here isn't to be less caring. It's to be more specific in how you care. Less, I'm always here for you energy. And more, I noticed this particular thing about you, and it mattered to me. That's what activates something real. That's the kind of man a woman finds herself thinking about when she's trying not to. Okay, this next part is where things get a little deeper. And I want you to actually sit with this one, because this is the piece that most men, even men who've read every book, watched every video, done the work, still quietly get wrong. It has to do with what a woman is actually testing for. Now, when I say testing, I don't mean games. I don't mean manipulation. I mean something much more instinctive than that. Something she's probably not even fully aware she's doing. Here's what's happening. When a woman pushes back on a man, when she's a little cold, or she cancels plans, or she says something slightly cutting, or she pulls away for no obvious reason, most men read that as rejection, and they respond to it like rejection. They either chase harder or they shut down completely. But that's almost never what's actually happening. What she's doing, on some level, often unconsciously, is checking something. She's checking, who is this man when things aren't going smoothly? Does he lose himself? Does he panic? Does he become someone different? Because here's the truth about long-term attraction that nobody really talks about. A woman can be physically attracted to a man from the start, but deep, sustained, she can't stop thinking about him attraction, that gets built or destroyed in moments of friction. Not in the good moments, in the hard ones. Let me show you what I mean. Picture this. A man has been seeing a woman for about a month. Things have been going well. Then, one evening, she goes quiet. Short texts. Kind of distant. He asks if she's okay. She says, yeah, fine. But it's the kind of fine that clearly isn't fine. Most men in this situation do one of two things. They either flood her with attention, more texts, more checking in, trying to fix the distance because the distance feels unbearable to them. Or they go cold in return. Pull back, act indifferent, try to win by caring less. Both of those responses fail, and they fail for the same reason. Both of them are reactions. Both of them are the man letting her emotional state completely dictate his behavior. Both of them communicate, in different ways, the same thing. I don't know how to hold myself steady when you're not giving me something to work with. Now picture a different man in the same situation. She goes quiet. He notices. He doesn't panic. He sends one genuine message, not trying to fix anything, not performing concern, just something real. Hey, I notice you seem a little off. Not pushing, just want you to know I'm around if you want to talk. And then he goes back to his life. He doesn't wait by the phone. He doesn't analyze her last message for hidden meaning. He trusts himself enough to have said what was true, and he lets it sit. That response, that quiet, unforced steadiness, does something to her. Because what she feels isn't just, oh, he's being patient. What she feels is, this man doesn't collapse when I'm not performing happiness. He sees me, he acknowledges me, and he doesn't need me to fix it for him. That is genuinely attractive in a way that's hard to explain, but impossible to fake. It's the hero instinct activating, not because he swooped in and saved the day, but because he was solid, unmoved, present without being desperate. And here's the emotional truth underneath all of this. Women, people in general, honestly, are carrying a quiet fear that the moment they stop performing, the moment they have a bad day or pull back or aren't their best selves, the people in their lives will leave, or panic, or make it about themselves. A man who doesn't do that. A man who can hold space for her difficult moments without making her feel guilty for having them, without needing her to be okay so that he can be okay. That man feels like safety, and safety, real, quiet, unspoken safety, is what turns attraction into something that lasts. This is the part most men never figure out. They spend so much energy trying to be impressive, trying to be exciting, trying to be the most interesting version of themselves on every date, in every conversation. And all of that effort, all of that performance, is actually moving them away from what she's genuinely looking for. Because she's not looking for a performance, she's looking for a person, a real one, with edges and opinions and a life that matters to him. A man who wants her but doesn't dissolve into her, who loves deeply but doesn't lose himself in it. That specific combination, I want you and I also have myself, is rarer than you'd think. And when a woman finds it, she doesn't let it go easily. There's one more thing, and this might be the quietest truth in this entire video. The hero instinct isn't something you trigger in a woman. It's something you become the kind of man who naturally activates. You can't fake your way into it. You can't learn the right lines and suddenly have women feeling it around you. Because she's not responding to your words, she's responding to who you are when no one's watching, who you are under pressure, who you are when you're not trying to impress anyone. And the men who understand this, really understand it, they stop trying to figure out what women want, and they start building the kind of internal life that makes them genuinely worth wanting. That shift, that quiet, unsexy, deeply important shift, that's where everything changes. So let's bring this back to where we started. Most men think attraction is about what they say, what they do, how they look, how much they provide. And look, those things exist. I'm not going to pretend they don't. But underneath all of that, underneath the dates and the texts and the effort and the trying, there's something simpler happening. A woman is asking a question. Not out loud, not even consciously most of the time. but she's asking it every time she's around a man she's drawn to. The question is he real? Not perfect, not impressive, not performing, just real, grounded, actually there. Does he know who he is when nobody's validating him? Does he stay steady when things get uncomfortable? Does he see her, specifically, genuinely, or is he just happy to have someone around? That's the test. That's always been the test. And the hero instinct, this thing we've been talking about, it's not a trick you run on someone. It's the natural result of a man who has done the quiet, unglamorous work of actually knowing himself, his values, his edges, what he wants and what he won't settle for. That kind of man walks into a room differently. Not louder, not more aggressive, just settled. Like he has somewhere to be, and he knows why. And women feel that, immediately, without being able to explain exactly what it is. You know what's interesting, though? Most men who watch something like this, they'll nod along. They'll think, yeah, that makes sense. They'll feel it land somewhere real. And then they'll go back to the same patterns, the same overtexting, the same people-pleasing, the same quiet performance of a man trying to be liked rather than a man trying to be known. Not because they're weak, but because old habits have gravity. Because it's genuinely uncomfortable to sit in silence instead of filling it. To say what you actually think instead of what seems safe. To let a woman miss you a little instead of constantly reminding her you're there. That discomfort is exactly where the work is. And the men who are willing to sit in that discomfort, to actually change the internal stuff, not just learn better lines, those are the men who stop wondering why attraction fades. Because for them, it stops fading. That's the real shift. Not in how you talk to women, in how you relate to yourself. There's a reason most relationship advice doesn't go here. It's easier to give you a list of things to say, a formula, a technique. But you've probably already noticed, techniques only get you so far. They might open a door, but they don't make her stay. What makes her stay is something you can't fake and can't rehearse. It's who you actually are when you're not trying. And if that's not fully built yet, that's okay. That's what the work is for. That's what paying attention to yourself, to your patterns, to the moments where you shrink or perform or lose your footing. That's what all of that is building toward. A man who doesn't need a script, because he already knows who he is. Most men will hear everything in this video and still miss it. Not because it's complicated, but because the ego has a way of saying, yeah, I already knew that, and moving on before anything actually changes. But a few of you, and you'll know if this is you, felt something specific watching this. Like something clicked into place that had been slightly off for a long time. If that's you, stick around. There's more on this channel about the psychology of attraction, relationships, and what it actually means to become the kind of man who doesn't have to chase, who doesn't have to perform, who just shows up as himself and finds that's enough. Subscribe if that's the kind of thing you want more of. Not because of some algorithm, but because this work, the real work, is worth doing. And you already know that, or you wouldn't still be here.